This week on Personally Speaking, our guest is Dana Perino. You know, of course, as a former White House press secretary for George W. Bush, and she's also someone who's written a great new book. I wish someone had told me that. We're going to talk to Dana today about good advice for good living. Stay with us here on Personally Speaking. Hello and welcome to Personally Speaking. I'm your host, Monsignor Jim Lisante, and Dana Perino joins me now. Dana has been with Fox News Channel since 2009. She currently co-anchors America's Newsroom with Bill Hemmer and Dana Perino. And she serves as co-host of The Five, one of the most popular shows on cable television. Dana also hosts Fox News Audio's weekly podcast, Perino on Politics. Prior to joining Fox News Channel, Dana served as the White House press secretary for President George W. Bush. Dana is a New York Times best-selling author, and her latest book is titled, I Wish Someone Had Told Me, The Best Advice for Building a Great Career and a Meaningful Life. The book is curated by Dana, includes advice, insightful stories, and life lessons from her lifelong friends and Fox News personalities. Dana has been married since 1998 to Peter McMahon. She's here with us today to talk about her life, her career, her marriage, and her faith, the values that really matter the most to her. Joining me now, I'm so pleased to welcome to Personally Speaking, Dana Perino. Dana Perino is our guest here on Personally Speaking. She has a new book out. This is called I Wish Someone Had Told Me. I was thinking about the title. I was thinking every time you emphasize a different word in that title, it can mean something different. I wish someone had told me. 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 Dana, it's a great book. What's the target audience for this? Who are you hoping will read this book?
Thank you so much for having me. I've really been looking forward to this. I've been so impressed with your guest list, so I feel honored to be asked to be here. It's interesting you talk about the title because when I wrote the book, I always had the title in mind, and it's because previously I'd written a book that was really geared to younger women, so the ones in the quarter life crisis, like 25 years old. And my mom read the book right before it came out, and she sent me a note. She said, "Wow, I wish someone had told me this."
Okay.
And it stuck with me. So when I decided to write this book, which was not just for young women, but much more broad-based, and for people that were dealing with things that I still get asked about from younger people, but those young people I've been mentoring for 15 to 20 years, they're now in a very different position in their careers, but they still come to me with questions. And so I thought, well, this is the best way to do it, but I'm also humble enough to know that I don't have all the answers. And so I reached out to people that I've gotten to know over the years. I'm really blessed with lots of great friends and colleagues. And I just started asking them, what's the best advice you ever got? Or what was it like when you got fired? Or how do you deal with disappointment?
Right.
What do you look for in a good employee? And that's how it all came together.
Well, it's interesting that you just mentioned, sending the book to your mom. I'm always intrigued because of the great career you've had, the great writing you've done, the great reporting you've done. I'm always intrigued by like the family of origin. So I got to ask you, when you look back on the way you were raised, Dana, what did the family that raised you do right?
I think a few things. So, well, first of all, you're in Massapequa, right?
Yes.
Okay. I only got to go there about 10 years ago when Brian Kilmeade invited me there.
Okay, sure. Our neighbor.
I
Yeah.
fell in love. I love your town. I think it's so beautiful and patriotic, and I would have loved to have grown up there.
Yeah.
I grew up in a wonderful place, but it's very, very different. I grew up in Colorado and Wyoming. And mainly for me, my family's ranch, which was homesteaded by the Perinos in the late 1800s. My grandfather and grandmother were very influential in my life in terms of character building,
Wow. Okay.
values. And then my mom and dad raised my sister and I in the Lutheran church. And I've often been asked by my Catholic friends, "What are you protesting?" Which I think is pretty funny.
Yes.
My husband actually went to Catholic boarding school in Scotland, and he was the only non-Catholic boarder, but we feel like honorary Catholics.
Right, right.
We have
We're,
such
we're glad to
affection.
have you in the family any way we can.
We
Yeah.
have such affection for the church. So I think one, being raised in the church was important for me in so many ways. Like one, it was the liturgy, right? So that's something that in times of distress or worry, or even times of just meditation, I can return to over and over again. And that was always really important to me. I also, aside from all the things that the church did for me, my dad was an avid news consumer, like
Ah,
everything. We would subscribe to every news magazine back in the old days, right? So Newsweek, Time, U.S. News and World Report. He even got National Review. He got the New Republic, like all the magazines. We got them. And when I was in third grade, my dad started a tradition with me where I had to read the Rocky Mountain News and the Denver Post before he got home from work. And I had to be prepared to discuss two articles with him before dinner. And I could choose any article that I wanted. And I look back on that and I would say those are the two probably most important things, being raised on the ranch and growing up in the Lutheran church. And then from the academic side of things, getting an interest in news.
Dana Perino's our guest. We're talking about her new book. I wish someone had told me that. You know, it's interesting. Of all the magazine you just mentioned that you read in your youth, U.S. News and World Report recently said, Dana, that Massapequa Park is the best community to live in all of New York State. How about that, huh?
Yeah, no, I saw that. I saw that because for some reason, Massapequa comes up for me over and over again because obviously there's the Brian Kilmeade connection,
Right.
but also Peggy Noonan.
Yes, that's true. Yeah, yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
And so I grew up admiring Peggy. And I would say when I was 20, when I was going through the quarter life crisis, I read Peggy's book. She wrote it after the first book.
Right.
It's called What I Saw at the Revolution.
Right. I
And
remember.
it's her story about working as a young woman in the Reagan White House as a speechwriter. And I remember for the first time in my life going, oh, it's okay to have these feelings and thoughts about the way I view the world from a conservative lens, and
Yeah.
I can be successful. It was eye-opening. I admired her so much. And now that I can call her a friend is
Yeah.
just amazing.
Yeah. She's immediately what I go to Saturday mornings as I open the Wall Street Journal. She's so insightful, as you are too.
I beat you because I read it on Fridays.
Oh, I've heard that. You can do that
Because
online.
yeah, because
Maybe
it posts online.
I need to do that. Now, I need to ask you too, because most people listening to or watching a show like this on TV and radio don't even know what forensics is anymore. But one of the bonds I have with you is I too was a high school forensics guy. And what did that do for you?
Well, that's interesting. Okay, so when I was growing up, I never went to ballet, but I was a gymnast, so I could tumble. And I wanted to be in the Olympics. And I write about this in the book about when I was a little girl in third grade. Oh, third grade must have been very pivotal for me now that I'm talking about it. But the school librarian and the PE coach said that I might like the Kathy Rigby book. And she was a Olympic gymnast.
Right.
And that was sort of my first taste of like a nonfiction biography about somebody. I'm like, oh, you can be this and you can write and you can read a book about it.
Yeah.
Well, I thought I was going to be an Olympic gymnast, but when puberty hit, it was pretty clear I was never going to become an Olympic gymnast. And I knew I had ambition. I knew that I wanted to be in news early on. I wanted to, in my mind's eye, be a main local anchor at a decent sized station in the southwest part of the country where I could utilize the Spanish language I was learning and loving,
Right.
and someplace warmer than where I grew up. Okay, that was in my mind's eye. And I guess intuitively, I knew that the speech and debate team would be a place where I could land. And there was a teacher there at Ponderosa High School, named Sammy Wheeler. Her name was Sammy Wheeler. And I joined the speech team. And then Terry Rich, she took over and was a speech and debate coach. And I loved the people. I loved the community so much. I didn't mind getting up at 5 o'clock on a Saturday and going to those competitions. I won the state tournament in high school for individual speaking, individual events, for a informative speech. I think that's what they called it.
Okay.
I never really did this fast speed talking debate like a lot of people
Right,
have
right.
done. But I mean, a lot of people who do speech and debate or forensics, we have an interesting, wonderful community. For example, later on in my life, I worked with Karl Rove,
Okay.
and speech and debate is what really set him apart too.
I think it's a great way to have to think things through, think on your feet, and that's obviously something you do all the time.
Well, if you think about it, with extemporaneous speaking, that's actually how I went to college. I got a full ride scholarship for the speech team at the University of Southern Colorado.
Wow.
And
Yeah.
extemp was my main event. So that's current events, quick thinking,
Right.
got to speak about it. And where does that show up later was when I was White House press secretary, and even now to this day.
Well, now again, you're giving me great, Dana. You're great. You're leading me just where I want to go. So people will know you from the Five and the whole Fox connection, but many of us are old enough certainly to remember the George W. administration.
Yeah.
What strikes me, and again, it could be in my mind's eye, is that you had a workable, civil, respectful relationship with most of the press. And in
Yes.
recent times, that's kind of a
Yeah.
vague memory, but it's not happening anymore. Was there something in you? Or was there something in the press that made it a much more civilized experience back then?
I definitely think it was something in me, but I
Okay.
also think that all of these things come from the top.
Uh,
So I worked for a president who would demand that people be treated like I would want to be treated myself. And to be honest, I actually thought a lot of the reporters, at least in the White House, were very fair
okay.
or tried to be. Sometimes the producers back at headquarters or the
Hmm.
editors or the headline writers might not have been, but I had a good relationship with them. And I had been the deputy for a long time. I do think the media has changed a lot. When I left on January 20th, 2009, I didn't even have a Twitter account or Facebook. It just wasn't something that we used. And social media has changed so much of our lives, for better or worse. And I think in some ways it's helped obviously communicate more quickly and transparently, but it has also added an element that I think has hurt in some ways. The other thing is that of course we had problems with the press,
Hmm.
but we would keep it private. I never really thought to go after a news organization in public. It was rare. We did one time. I remember when the New York Times um, refused to adhere to President Bush's request that they keep some classified information secret, classified information that had gotten out. And it was about the war on terror. And he was afraid that, one, it would disrupt this program and that it would put men and women in our intelligence community in danger. And they ran it anyway. And that was that was 2006, I
Okay.
think. And so I would say that's when it felt a little bit like things started taking a turn with the New York Times and NBC News in particular. But for the actual reporters in the room, I had good relationships with them. And I also think this is true. Most people, I think you would say this, most people and humans are pretty good to each other in person. You're terrible to each other online.
Yes. Yeah.
But the
No.
human connection is special. And so I would say that President Bush really set the tone. And I would also add this, always in my mind, I would think, even if I had the most sarcastic, funny comment, I would swallow it because I would
Mm,
imagine if he's watching me right now,
right.
will he
Right.
be proud of what I'm going to say? And if the answer was no, I never said it.
Dana Perino is our guest, and we're talking about her book. I wish someone had told me that. And I wanted to ask you because you touched on social media. When I got to this parish 16 years ago on Long Island, a small group, but a noisy group that did not like disappointment. And online, they did some vicious and untrue things about me. I mentioned that
Hmm.
because in researching you, I found, stuff that was totally untrue about you.
Yeah.
And I'm just wondering, how do you, I guess it's how do you as a personality deal with it? How do you as a person of balance deal with it? When you know something's on there, and again, social media can be good, but when you know something
Yeah.
that's truly dishonest and wrong and an attack, what's your response to that?
Well, I have a thicker skin than I used to have,
Okay.
mostly because I ignore it. So I learned something one day from a friend. He said, you can put your settings so that you only see comments from people you follow.
Okay.
This made an immediate difference overnight. I didn't see any of the bots, any of the negativity. And that was about 8 years ago. It made a huge difference in my life. So as you are counseling people that might be going through this, it's a really, really good recommendation. So there's one thing.
Okay.
The other thing is sometimes I have to tell my family not to look at it, right? Because a lot of some of these things that are clickbait, some people are making money off of taking our pictures and then putting things like that my husband and I have just adopted a baby from Africa. That's not true. That my husband has a terminal illness. It's not true. It's amazing how many people fall for these things, but this is why they do it and this is why they make money. We, for the most part, ignore them. There are instances, however, where I will raise it.
Hmm.
For example, if someone is trying to scam people out of money using my likeness, I will take that to Fox General Counsel, and they handle it pretty quickly.
Okay, good. You say right up front in the book, where someone had told me that of all the great advice you've been given over your lifetime, the best is don't miss the opportunity, the experience of being in love. But I guess I wondered when I read that, Dana, do you have any insight into how are we supposed to know when love is true, when love is real?
Oh gosh, it's interesting. I was part of I went to the Lutheran Church of the Reformation when I worked on Capitol Hill in DC, and it's a church that's about maybe a block and a half from the Supreme Court, just behind. And there was a singles group that got together every Wednesday night, and because I grew up with youth group, which I loved.
Yeah.
And then the singles group was great. And I remember being about to turn 25. I had not even been on a date in like 2 years. I was like, wow, nothing is turning out the way I thought it was going to. And there was this woman there who was slightly older than the rest of us. I mean, this is going to sound ridiculous, but at the time I was 25 and she was just about 40. And I remember confessing to her that I was feeling this way, that like nothing's working out and blah, blah, blah. And she said, remember what God says over and over again in the Bible. It's to fear not. Like he's not forgotten about you. You can relax. And if you relax and let him handle it, then you'll probably meet someone. It was such great advice. And, when you get into that state of like, and you finally remember to pray about it, it's like, oh gosh, why didn't I just do this initially? But turning it over to God makes a difference. And that was in May of 1997.
Okay.
And on August 17th, 1997, I boarded a plane. I sat next to a guy who wasn't wearing a wedding ring, who had a British accent, was slightly older than me. And we call it love at first flight. And we got married 9 months later.
That's
so
incredible.
I don't know exactly how but this is what I would say.
Yeah.
I think if a relationship feels difficult, it's not right.
Okay.
Like if you're always struggling, I understand there are passionate couples, but if you're fighting all the time, if there's jealousies, then that is probably not going to be a good long-term relationship. I think when it feels like that beautiful moment that you glimpse every now and then of total serenity, those are little gifts from God. And then I think if you feel like that in your relationship, doesn't mean it's always going to be easy and you're going to have arguments, of course. But if overall that's how you start out in a relationship that turns into a marriage, that to me is what's going to work. I'd say this with about friendships too. Like if things are hard and if your friend is always making it difficult to be their friend,
yeah,
it's probably not something that you should waste your time on. I talk about that in the book too. Like cutting out negative people from your life is a great way to just feel a lot better.
Dana Perino is a guest, and she's talking about the book, which is, I wish someone had told me that. At the very beginning of the book, she dedicates it to her husband, Peter. Dana, when I do weddings, most weekends, I always like to say, I don't want to give a canned talk on marriage and your love. So tell me why of the 4 billion people out there you could marry, why is this the one? You've named some of the wonderful things that you've discovered through the relationship with Peter, but what did he have that made you say bingo? Besides the accent.
The accent is key. As he says, I better not lose it.
Yeah.
I remember one day somebody asked him if he was Australian and he was mortified because he has a very beautiful BBC British accent, and he'd been in America for 28 years. I was like, yikes, I better really remember my posh accent. Um, he makes me laugh every single day. He told me, can I tell you a joke that he told
Sure.
me? This is the joke he told me on the plane. It's clean, don't worry, everybody. Um, so he's traveled the world, and I thought that was super interesting too. And he's so smart. He's my personal Google. And he had said that he'd just been in India. And I was like, India? He goes, well, yes, of course, England and India have very strong relationship, of course, all the history there. And I said, oh, and he goes, I don't know if you know, but Mahatma Gandhi's brother worked in London. I'm like, no, I didn't know that. And he goes, yeah, he worked at the Ritz Hotel in the cloakroom at the hotel. And his name was Mahatma Coat.
Oh, oh God. I can use that. It's clean.
It's clean. I told you. I would not believe me. I know my audience.
Yeah. Dana Perino is our guest. We're talking about Peter, her lovely, wonderful husband. And let me ask you this too, because I'm sure one of the things that attracted Peter was not just your mind and your goodness, but obviously the fact that you're this great looking woman. I mentioned that to you because you're in this career where, hey, we're living in a culture where youth looks is lionized and aging is frowned on. So I just had a couple come up to me who I married 30 years ago, and they said, hey, you changed. And I said, yeah, 30 years will do that. But I mentioned because are you intimidated in any way by ageism or the fear that somehow or another people are going to judge us as less important because we're still alive when we're aging? It's part of the process of being human.
Of course, it's on my mind a lot. I especially health wise. It's one thing about your outward appearance, but also I'm just very cognizant of at any moment things could change.
Yeah.
And you start having more appointments, health doctor appointments than you like, just for preventative purposes. Thankfully, right now, I definitely feel at the top of my game. I feel healthier and more confident than I have maybe ever now. And which is one of the reasons I felt like the book did pretty well, because I thought, okay, I don't have all the answers, but guys, if you follow some of this advice, you will feel better about yourself and just be in a better place to make good decisions for yourself. I'm not going to tell you exactly what to do. I'm not going to tell you how you can become the White House press secretary, but I can tell you how to deal with lots of things that come up along the way. So I think about that. And this is a bad habit, and it's something that I need to turn over to God to handle. But sometimes I definitely start counting days. Right.
Okay.
So I start thinking, well, I have to get all of these things done and I'm counting because, in 7 years I'll be 60, and then seven years goes by fast. And then when I'm 60, and then I'm like, and then Peter, when I'm 60, he's going to be 78. And then what do we get? So I can let my mind go way far ahead in the future and start focusing on that. And then you miss the present.
And that would be a shame. My mom, who lived to be 102 and a half, said to me, nobody knows what they've got, so just live each day. And that's what you're saying, too. I got to ask you, too, though, that when Dana wrote this book, and as I mentioned, I wish someone had told me, it's a lot of advice, good advice, great advice from a lot of people she knows, loves, friends, coworkers. But what can happen when you don't write a book that is your version of self-help, but rather share the thoughts and feelings of others, there's humility to that. Like, why didn't Dana say, let me tell you what I think you need to do? And you keep going to other people. Like, where did this humility come from?
But there is one chapter in there called Dana's Do's and Don'ts.
That's true.
And that's where I put all the stuff I wanted people to know. Everything from
one chapter.
Not to use too many exclamation points in your communication, not to wear Uggs to the office because it makes you shuffle your feet like you don't care. But my favorite piece of advice is that choosing to be loved is not a career limiting decision. And for me, that's made all the difference. And interestingly, when we at Fox News Media, which did an amazing job with this book, like super creative, we talked to all sorts of different types of media, which was so fun. Time and again, everybody wanted to come back to the love story. So to me, that's what people are looking for. Like, especially because in a way, I don't know if you would agree with this, but as you get older, work in a lot of ways gets easier. Life gets harder or more complex.
Okay.
So
that's true. Yes.
Yeah, I think so.
I love that too. Dana Perino has been our guest. Dana, I want our folks to get the book, but I got to tell you something. One of the things you celebrate most in this book is what you call listening leadership, the ability to truly hear. I find most people in my counseling are half listening and already have the answer to the question. In your work, I would think to be effective, you have to be an effective listener. Last question. Is there a way to stop programming in our mind what we think people want to hear and need to hear and just truly from our hearts listen?
I have found that I think it's the best possible thing. I used to watch President Bush, and he would be in a meeting. He would wait till everybody spoke before he spoke. And one time I asked him about that, and he said, well, I learned from my dad that if I speak first, nobody else is going to tell me what they think. So that was from a leadership standpoint. In an interview standpoint, I've noticed that sometimes somebody will say something, and if you're not listening and you're already thinking about your next question, you're going to miss something.
Yes.
And I saw it happen one time, like, darn it, why did I do that? So I try to be very intentional and listen. Look, these interviews are short. They're 4 minutes long. You know, I can check Instagram in the commercial break, but I try to just like really, really focus. And that also shows some respect for the guest because they've taken time out of their day. They're usually pretty nervous. If they know that I'm willing to listen, then we're probably going to have a better interview.
Dana Perino has been our guest. The book, Dana Perino, I wish someone had told me, is very much worth our listening. I want my readers, I want my listeners, I want my watchers to get the book. But Dana, I just thank you for being you. You know, there's a receptionist here at the rectory, and when I told her that you were our guest today, she said, I don't know why, but I listened to her because I like her. There's a likability factor, which makes listening to her that much easier. You're just such an engaging person, and I thank you for engaging with us on Personally Speaking, for your writing, for your testimony, for your openness. You're wonderful. Thank you, Dana, for being
Thank you. I hope I get to meet you in person.
Thanks for being with us on Personally Speaking. If you need to reach me, you can do that at personallyspeakingpodcast@gmail.com. You've probably been listening to this program on the Catholic channel on Sirius XM. You can also watch it on YouTube, searching under Personally Speaking with Monsignor Jim Lisante. We're also on CatholicTV.org. You can see us on Facebook at Personally Speaking with Monsignor Jim Lisante and on Instagram at Personally Speaking Podcast. I'm privileged to serve as host and executive producer, Personally Speaking. Our producer is Lisa Jandovic. Thanks so much for joining us. We'll be with you again next time on Personally Speaking.